Hey everyone, Nathan Nerdarch here from Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds. Today we're going to be talking about how to handle NPCs in combat, GM tip, Game Master tip. And with me I have...
I'm Ted.
And I'm Dave.
So I was thinking about a list of things that I kind of go over in my mind about this subject when I say, well, I've got this strange NPC or just an average farmer guy.
Before you go into that, we're talking about NPCs that are on the player side that happen to be there either as hired mercs or rescued people or just typical bystanders, right?
Yes, and before we get into that, where I came up with the idea for this video is I was listening to Happy Jack's RPG podcast, and they were talking about right now they're kind of not hating, but one of the problems they're having is the game that they're playing in is the comments are taking so freaking long because they have a lot of NPCs. Some people wrote in and emailed in or whatever, offered up suggestions on what to do about that, and apparently I think the DM fixed it by killing a lot of the NPCs in one of their last sessions. But in the meantime, so I was like, this is a really interesting topic, and I'm like, well, how would I do it, and how have I done it? And I figured, hey, you know what? We'll throw it out there for the Nerdarchy fans, and also you can check out Happy Jack's RPG podcast. It's a really good show.
All right, back to what I was saying. Yeah, so it's inspired by Happy Jacks.
So you're saying you have a list of questions you ask?
Yeah, so I say, well, kind of, what's the NPC's motivation? Is he a mercenary? Is he a mercenary that cares for his contract more than his life? What kind of level of honor does he have? Will he get paid? Is it possible for him to get paid by the other side? All these kind of questions. A farmer, was he a retired soldier? Is he bad at combat because he got hurt and great restoration's expensive? that kind of thing. So what's the motivation of the NPCs with the players? So big deal, like difference between a combat ready NPC or a combat avoiding NPC.
Right, so will they hide? Will they fight? Will they panic? Will they make a mistake? Will they purposely do something? Or accidentally do something that they shouldn't do?
Ted's been drinking again, guys.
Yeah,
because that's me.
H2.
Yeah,
not HO. So another thing with this concept is, as the GM, am I targeting these NPCs? Even if they're just a farmer on the side, and they're like, ant kegs are eating all my pigs, or whatever.
So there's a couple aspects. One, are they combatants or non-combatants?
Yes.
Okay. So the question is, are they adding to the combat, offensively, or are they an asset that has to be defended? Mm-hmm. That's one thing. Two, a lot of times when I have a lot of NPCs floating around, my players are like, well, what are they doing? Because they're fighting, and they're like, what are they, just watching, eating popcorn? No, they're handling their own shit over there. Because I don't want the NPCs to be the focus of my combat. I don't want to be dealing with them. I want to deal with the players, and I want to deal with the threats to the players and the action involving the players. And sometimes I don't do an adequate job of describing what the other NPCs are doing. But I would much rather be like, no, they're off doing their own thing. There's more creatures to contend with, and they're contending with it. Or, as one of the Happy Jacks fans actually wrote in, is giving them their own job to do.
Yeah. Whether it's cowering or fighting off
or
some
holding
goblins,
the pass, or a bunch of so. I guess there's this gamist aspect where people almost feel like, oh no, it can't happen unless we roll dice. Mm-hmm. But if you have 4 low level fighters, why can't they just gang up on the ogre and you can narrate it,
right?
Instead of doing all the die rolling. If in your mind you're the GM and there's 3 ogres in the encounter, you put a 4th one in, and or a couple orcs, and the NPCs are doing battle, locked in battle, which coincidentally wraps up around the same time as the PC's battle.
Or you can come and save them. Whatever.
Whatever you need, whatever the narration requires.
Yeah.
But it's a good way to reduce the bogging down of combat through. Okay, we have 6 other characters to make attack rolls for and take actions for.
Unless it's a combat heavy, it's an assassin or something like that they've hired. My NPCs do not get initiative. They don't deal a number damage. and I might roll dice just to be like, oh yeah, and they've done this or whatever. But it's just kind of to move it all along. So they're not. I kind of make it so they're not necessarily questioning what they're doing. I say it real quick, like, and he does this. Or you notice, Farmer Allen take an arrow in the leg and he stumbles away, behind cover. So he's hiding behind cover for the rest of the thing. There he is.
When an adventurer takes an arrow to the knee, he's no longer an adventurer. Does that mean he's no longer a farmer?
The things one must know the answers to before one dies.
Or takes an arrow to the knee.
Or takes an arrow to the knee. While the philosophizing, you are now an ex-philosopher.
So there's some different ways to handle it. You want to weigh in, Ted? What do you got for us?
I haven't done much with NPCs. Back in the
you're about to, because Scott's in your game and he loves hirelings and henchmen and all that.
Back in the day, I used to totally just allow a small group, and you could have players actually control the NPCs. But given more player agency, and given your thought patterns of just, okay, well, these guys will go handle that, you tell the players what's happening. I like the idea of it focusing totally on the player's story rather than on anything fantastic that mercs are going to wind up doing.
Actually, that's also a good point, because they were also discussing how, I think the GM does all the actions for the NPCs. Mm-hmm. And I feel like as the GM, you have enough to do. Ryan brings up this all the time. If you have a player that's good at playing a certain kind of character, hand them the NPC. If you feel like they have to take actions and do stuff, have them act on that player's initiative or whatever, and have them just do the thing for them. And as long as your players aren't being buttheads and, and they're going to role play the NPC. Now I don't do this all the time, and this is only for in combat. I don't like I don't want the player to have a second character, but this is really more or less for throwing the dice down and seeing what happens, and maybe they can say a thing or do a thing. Right now in my Outcast game, there's an NPC. I got to talk to my player about it a little bit more, but she has an imp familiar, so she role plays that familiar. But so I have to discuss. Sometimes I'm going to role play the familiar too. We're going to kind of share it back and forth when it makes sense to do so, and so we can come up with some an outline of some things. But I'm fine with the player having agency with that, because it makes for an interesting session, and it makes more fun for everybody. So that's another thing too, and the idea of having the DM role play the monsters and then role play the NPC on your side attacking the monsters. So then you're kind of especially if you're going to do any kind of banter or anything, then you're role playing to yourself, and that's just weird.
Yes, role playing to yourself. I've had to do it, and I don't particularly enjoy it.
I mean, because you're sitting behind the screen and then you have to run around the screen to the other side of the table and role play the NPC. That's not how you do it?
No.
Oh, all right.
Maybe if you're a Bugs Bunny.
Over here.
Oh, you're right. I need a rabbit hole. It'd be so much easier.
Yes.
In Ted's floor.
Yes, and there has to be a costume department down there, so you can change every time you come up. You look different.
Nice. You get the little horns with the flame in the background.
So, I think that covers it. You guys.
I'm good.
I think I'm good.
You think so? Yeah,
Except
sure.
I would say I have role played with myself before at the table, and I consider it more of a theatrical performance instead of just playing with myself. So just putting it out there.
So you heard it here on Nerdarchy.
Nate plays himself.
Nate plays with himself, and he
No.
considers it a theatrical performance when he does such.
Yeah, I'm just not going to comment for that.
So there's some suggestions. What do you guys do with your NPCs in combat? Do they fade to black? Do you role play with yourself like Nate does? Or do you do something completely different? We'd love to hear about it in the comments below. While you're at it, like, share, and subscribe.
You can follow us on Twitter.
You can have a conversation over on Reddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.